I feel good about our top folks in the race, and I think the next 2 weeks is going to reveal a lot about the candidates. I've learned that pressure brings out the best or the worst in candidates, and I think we're starting to see that right now.
Senator, when we see Ron Paul from Texas, and I know you've known him for a long time, when you see Ron Paul from Texas coming in with an impressive showing in Iowa and then comes in second place in New Hampshire, what do you make of that? I mean, I just wrote a blog post on my website about this, thinking that, look, it's easy for neoconservatives especially to kind of just dismiss him and kind of make fun of some of his positions and he's a nut and all this. But do you think there are some lessons for the Republican Party in the rise of Ron Paul?
Well, I'm glad you asked about it, because I think one of the things that's hurt the so-called conservative alternatives is saying derogatory things about Ron Paul. I don't agree with him on everything, but he's right about the out-of-control and unaccountable Federal Reserve. He's right about the need for limited constitutional government and the importance of individual liberty. And I really think the Republican who's going to win this thing, if they capture some of what Ron Paul has been talking about for years, I mean, and more we can see that what he's been talking about is true. So again, you don't have to agree with everything he's saying, but if the other candidates miss the wisdom in what he's saying about our monetary policy and limited government, then I think we'll see it's to their detriment, because the 20% or 25% or so that are supporting him are people that we need in the Republican Party. And a lot of them are libertarians, but they're our natural base, and we shouldn't ignore them.
Well, in effect, couldn't you make the argument, Senator, that the establishment mentality in the Republican Party that rebranded itself compassionate or American greatness conservatism, and then now it's being called big government conservatism, that it kind of created this Ron Paul boomlet? I mean, it created it by extending itself militarily, perhaps, and extending its spending way beyond its means.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And if Republicans don't embrace a lot of these ideas, we're going to end up with a third party that essentially guarantees the Democrats are going to win. But the debate within the Republican Party that I'm comfortable with is between conservatives and libertarians. There's just no room for moderates and liberals when your government's $15 trillion in debt. We don't have any money to spend, so it doesn't make any sense to compromise with someone who wants to grow the government. We need to talk about how best to limit and downsize government. And what I'd like to see is a Republican Party that embraces a lot of the libertarian ideas.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, and we have a lot of media types who listen to this broadcast, and I hope you just took note of what Jim Demint said about Ron Paul and about that underlying philosophy of his of returning power to the people and moving toward a much more constitutionally based approach in our government. And again, not agreeing with everything he says on Iran or things that have been written about 9/11. But nevertheless, there's a reason that all these young people are turning out for him, and he seems to be growing, not getting smaller year by year. I mean, he's 76 years old, Senator. 76? Yeah. He looked pretty young last night.
Well, and he's got a lot of energy, and again, he's got a big young following, and we may not agree with him on military and defense, and I don't on a lot of those things, but we're going to end up in the same place if we're broke. We're not going to have the ability to defend ourselves and have people all over the world if we don't have a strong economy. We're not going to have a strong economy with big government, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. And so we need to listen to what, it's not just Ron Paul, and millions of Americans are beginning to realize that we need to return to decentralized, more individualistic.
All right. Well, he just represents a sentiment, right? I mean, he happens to be articulating that sentiment, which I think is based in a growing revulsion against both parties. I hear that everywhere I go, Senator, which is why I believed in 2010, and with your help, the Tea Party movement made a big difference in this process.